Okay, you can hear me. Hi, everybody. We'll do a quick presentation for our new capability that we actually just introduced for Black Hat. Where what we're doing, we're adding the ability for you guys to add the ability to scan first-party application and get all this data into your risk management quality solution. So before I start, let me just explain what do I mean by first-party application. So first-party application are your custom, homegrown, everybody calls it differently, application that you have in your environment. Every customer, every organization will have their own application that they build themselves. And the big challenge with those applications is that, how do I find the risk? How do I know if I have vulnerabilities, right? So it's your code, you're using libraries from all over the place. How do I know if I have a vulnerability there? And the only way to do it is create your proprietary ability to detect those things or assess those things, right? So let's say you have you figure out you have a jar or any other file that is vulnerable for vulnerability. We need somehow to go ahead and scan our entire environment and find, do I have this jar? Do I have this vulnerability in my environment, in production, in development, anywhere? Now, usually you do it with your own code, so you'll have some unique tool, or you have SCCM or any other code that can write and scan something and bring the information back to you. The challenge with that is all the information is scattered all around. You'll have a different tool that doing all this detection and trying to fix those vulnerabilities, and then you have a tool like Qualys that helps you detect all the vulnerabilities in your environment. Okay? So we have, in order to help you be more efficient and bring in all your detection logic, all your assessment logic into one place, we've introduced this new capability. Now let's take an example, and that's actually real customer example. Qualys has what we call a risk score. So we know how to scan your environment and find all the vulnerability in your environment and basically give it a score based on many criteria, like is this vulnerability weaponized in the field? Is it an external device? We take a lot of feeds and we tell you your score is 500 in this case. So it's a medium score, you can see it's yellow. Now this score is for your third-party application, basically every signature that Qualys provide out of the box. What happened with those custom application, your first-party application? They are not part of this score. They are, as we said, managed by a completely different workflow. Now with this integration, the score will basically change, because this score, the 500, indicates your out-of-the-box signature, your third party. If you add your own custom application to the mix, your score actually in reality is 950, which means now your score is critical and you have to take an action. Which basically means without the integration of those two, you are blind and you do not see your entire risk score. So to summarize, right, we have the 260 surfaces, so Qualys has a very, very large catalog of signature covering many surfaces, many OSs, network devices, literally everything that there is a vulnerability on, Qualys will find it. We've added the ability for you to add your own logic for your own custom application into the same mechanism. And now we're taking all the signatures and all the detection, and now we are calculating our score based on all this information, and not just based on the signature that we have out of the box. So let's take an example. Let's say that you have a Java application that you guys are using in your environment. And let's say that you have a pen test, and the pen test is running against your application. They're looking at your source code, and they figure out there's a one jar, specific jar in your application that has a vulnerability. This is not a vulnerability that everybody has. Somebody in your organization wrote the code, they have a problem in the code, and the pen test identified it as vulnerable. So you have a vulnerable jar, right? You want to make sure that this vulnerable jar is not across your environment, right? Because you have your application, but your application is deployed on many, many other devices. What we're going to do here, we're going to be able to allow you to write the code, to write the detection, and run and scan your entire environment for this specific jar that is very unique to your environment. Okay? If another customer scans for the jar, they don't even have the jar. It's your own jar that we scan for. And all this information, all their assessment result will go back to the same console. So how does it work? First of all, we call it bring your own signature, bring your own detection. So we are opening our platform, and you can use any scripting language, PowerShell, Python, Perl, all those kind of scripting language to add your own logic. So you will create the logic to detect this specific jar. Okay, you'll create the logic that what you're looking for. And then our agent will run those scans across all your environment. Again, based on your criteria, where and when you define. But our agent, the agent that you currently use for Qualys, is the same agent, will be used to run your scan against your data. All this information, all the assessment, all the results of those scans will come back to VMDR, which means now this information, it's a custom QID, if you're familiar with Qualys QIDs. Okay? It's a QID, it's a vulnerability that will be fully integrated with everything that you have from VMDR, from our VM solution. So you can use APIs, you can use the same report, you can use the same workflows, but now you also have your own vulnerability as you define it. And once you find those vulnerabilities, you can use our prioritization mechanism and remediation mechanism, and you can actually write your own remediation. So you can say, if I find this vulnerability, here's how I fix it. And you can fix it directly from the same console. So we're basically adding the ability for you guys to add your own logic, to bring your own logic into our platform. And let's go back to our example. So you have this vulnerable jar, right? So what we're going to do, we're going to write a script that figure out, oh, I have this jar. If script runs and it finds a jar in a specific location, it's going to flag the asset as vulnerable. So Qualys will take your script that finds those jars, run it across your environment. Every time that we find an asset that has this jar, we're going to flag it and we call it vulnerable. All this information will go to the VMDR dashboard. So now you can see your own vulnerable jar side by side with Windows, Linux, Chrome, Firefox, all those vulnerabilities side by side, and you need to decide what is more important. What should I go and fix first? Based on our prioritization technology. Based on our true risk, you will be able to figure out this introduces more risk than another one, and take the action based on that. Few more examples that we have. Using the same technology, right? You can do 0 days. So one thing with 0 days is that sometimes it takes time for the vendor to release the patch or the remediation. Many customers don't have the time. They want to take an action, do something until the vendor releases the official patch. You can use the same technology to find this 0 day, detect this 0 day, flag the 0 day, and then actually take the action to remediate it or to mitigate it. So you can make it respond to 0 day much faster. Another great example, any of us, we have processes running all across our servers and workstations, right? Some of those processes are mandatory. For example, an antivirus solution, a DLP solution, VPN solution may be mandatory. You need to make sure it's running. You can use the same technology to scan your entire environment, find all those processes that are not running. And if it's not running, it's a vulnerability, there's a risk. If the antivirus is not running on the device, there's a risk to the device. We need to deal with it. So we're going to flag it, and we will allow you actually to restart it or take the action to fix the problem. Last but not least, and just from those examples, Chrome and Firefox and actually Edge, they have add-ons. Those add-ons can be very, very dangerous, right? They literally scan and look at all the traffic that the user is doing, even if it's connected to VPN. You may want to prevent your user to install specific plugins or even remove them. You can use the technology to find the specific plugins that you don't want to and take the action and remove them. But when you find them, they'll be flagged as vulnerability, so you can decide, is it more important right now to remove all those plugins, or should I go ahead and patch my Windows because my vulnerability with Windows are higher in terms of prioritization? All goes into the same console. So, as I said, the main benefit that you'll get from adding this technology into your VMDR solution is saving time. Saving cost, actually, because you have one tool that does it all, but even more importantly, saving time. You'll be able to see the real risk and respond to the real risk much, much faster. And with that, I'll do a very quick demo, because the reason it's quick, it's a very, very simple thing to do, okay? So let me show you how it looks like. And for those of you who are familiar with Qualys, you'll see how easy it is. So what I'm doing, I'm creating a script. You see I can select, it's a custom QID. I want to write it for Linux. I'm giving it a score. So this is my risk score. If this is detected, that's how much risk, 95 is how much risk this thing introduced. Now what I'm going to do here, I'm going to write a Python script. I'm going to remove this. Let me stop here for a second and remove this. So I'm writing a Python script that will basically detect a specific vulnerability, my own vulnerability in Azure. This one is an example for if I find some malicious data in my Azure deployment. This is a script, you write it, you can integrate with GitHub, you can import it, but it's your script. Your logic of your script will tell you, see you have exit code 1 and 0 for those of you who understand scripting. Based on the exit code, we will decide is there's a risk on this asset or is there no risk on the asset. So you provide all the logic into those scripts, we take those scripts, run it across your devices, and based on the response of your script, we decide should we flag this asset as vulnerable or not, okay? And all this information goes back to VMDR, and I'll show you how it looks like. So you can see how simple it is, right? That's all. You just follow these steps, and you're good to go. And you just run it, it will run the scan, and what I want to show you, I'll skip here. This is how you run it. You basically say, I want to run this script on those assets, and you can define a cadence. So those are the assets I'm going to run the script against, and I'm going to define the when. And once it's done, everything is in VMDR, as you can see here. Everything is fully integrated with VMDR. You see 5K, this is custom vulnerabilities. If I had regular vulnerability, regular signatures, they'll also be here. Everything fully integrated with our knowledge base. As you can see here, it's like any other vulnerability. The only difference, it's your vulnerability that you wrote the code for. And I can even tell you, we make it even easier for you guys. We have a library of templates and out-of-the-box vulnerabilities. So if you don't want to write all the code, you can just take code or use our library to start your project. And with that, I'd like to thank you guys all, and we can do the drawing. Thank you.